Hello you beautiful people, Aaron here, back with another video. Recently we have had a vast amount of characters arise for all the different elements in Genshin Impact, but there's one element that has not been given love. Okay, well I guess there's Geo too, but there's another element that has been even more desperate for love and for an even longer amount of time. That element is physical damage, who got the last bit of love since the Raiden Shogun for Eula, and if you don't count that, then it would be Eula herself back before Inazuma's release. That's where our Chocobo Vocaloid, Mika, comes into play. But what does Mika do and how is he best used? Well, before I answer those questions, I just want to say that if you do end up enjoying this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel as it helps me out so much. Also, as always, chapters are in the description. Now let's get into it. Mika is specifically a Eula support with an emphasis on buffing physical damage and attack speed with some healing. His buffs are all in his elemental skill, which grants Soul Wind state to all party members upon skill cast. However, this skill has a tap and hold version, and as per usual, the hold version is better. The tap version has Mika simply shoot an arrow from his crossbow dealing damage. The hold version has Mika enter an aiming mode similar to that of Nahida's, where he is able to lock onto a single enemy to then fire a crossbow bolt, which deals more damage. After the crossbow bolt hits an enemy, the bolt will rise into the sky, at which point it will explode and send shards out at a maximum of 3 enemies, dealing damage to each. Mika's elemental burst is a full heal for the entire party and grants the Eagle Plume state to allies. When in this Eagle Plume state, when the character's normal attacks hit an enemy, they will be healed by Mika. His healing can be procced once every 2.5 seconds, and all of Mika's heals scale with his maximum HP. Mika's Ascension passives allow him to buff physical damage percent through a new means. His first passive allows him to grant detector stacks to enemies. Each stack, up to a maximum of 3, grants a 10% physical damage bonus to allies affected by the Soul Wind's attack speed bonus from his elemental skill. Stacks can be gained in 2 different ways, both of which involve Mika's elemental skill. The first way is in his tap version, in which case Mika will generate a detector stack based on how many enemies hit, the second of which is much easier to pull off, as it instead can be gained from each shard that appears after the bolt rises up and explodes from his hold skill. Second Ascension passive can only be activated when the Soul Wind state from his skill and the Eagle Plume state from his burst are both active. If this is the case, the maximum number of detector stacks increases by 1, and 1 more stack can be granted to the active character by scoring a critical hit on an enemy. To use Mika in a team, you're going to want to go through your sub DPS first, then Mika to use his skill, then burst, and then your main DPS, as the duration of his effects are rather short. The way the 4th Ascension passive is worded means that you could possibly lose the last detector stack to a more off-field character if you have to swap to them before your main DPS. So this way of playing is the most safe. His talent priority isn't super tricky, but it all does depend on what you want from Mika, as his main usefulness comes from his Ascension passives. Generally, since the attack speed he grants from his skill starts at a base 13%, you can forego leveling it up for the time being, as the base amount will allow him to grant Eula an extra stack for her burst, which he can't do again until at C5. It will also put Razor near the attack speed cap at base level, and Xinyan doesn't benefit from attack speed at all, so not leveling this first or at all is fine if you want to save up on resources. However, if you plan on using him, do level this up to 8 if you can, as this is a solid threshold, especially for Constellations. So as a support, you would want to level his burst first, then skill, and then normal attacks if at all. But he can also technically be played as a main DPS, in which case you're looking to level his talents in the exact opposite order. But before we continue, I wanted to talk a bit more about his burst real quick, as you'll notice that I swap between wanting to use his burst and not. As a general rule of thumb, his burst should be used. At base, his burst grants healing and a 10% physical damage bonus from his 4th Ascension passive. While useful, this isn't major. The only time his burst should always be used is when you pair him with a good enough artifact set to warrant it, like the Noblesse or Exile set. However, it's better to have it up for when you need it than to not. Now onto his constellations, which are all pretty underwhelming. His first constellation isn't good. It decreases the heal interval time of his burst by an amount equal to the attack speed his skill grants. This will normally only allow for 1 extra healing proc starting at skill talent level 8, which leads to only a 4.5% healing increase. The second constellation is almost useless, as it allows his skill to grant an extra detector stack for his physical damage bonus. This has a very high chance to do absolutely nothing, since his Ascension 4 passive grants his final stack on critical hits. Since it does not matter what source this needs to be from, you can proc this on an elemental skill or burst. This means that Xinyan and Razor both will most likely not benefit from this, while both Eula and a main DPS Mika won't benefit from it at all, since they have a higher likelihood of critting with their other elemental attacks. However, it is much more beneficial when up against a boss, since you're more likely to only get about 2 detector stacks, making this a situational constellation. His third constellation is okay, as it increases the healing that his burst does by about 17.2%. Since he was already full healing the squad, this constellation is nothing major, but does allow for him to build more energy recharge or damage without sacrificing his healing output. His C4 is really good, as it allows Mika to generate energy to himself whenever he heals the active character with his Eagle Bloom state. This can only occur a max of 5 times, but you'll generally see this occurring more around 4 times. This will actually lead to an energy recharge requirement decrease of about 50 to 70%, which is freaking phenomenal, making this his second best constellation. However, his burst offers only a full heal, the detector stack from his Ascension 4 passive, and now this energy generation, so you might not want to use his burst every rotation, making energy generation not as necessary on him. His 5th constellation is meh, and only specifically usable for Eula, as it puts her at the exact point she needs to be at to get another stack for her burst. This will only be about a 5.6% damage bonus for her though, or even less for the other physical DPS characters. His 6th constellation is his best, as it increases his detector stack cap by 1, which increases the max physical damage bonus he grants from 40% to 50%. It also increases allies' physical crit damage by 60% when they are affected by his attack speed increase. This constellation also makes his 2nd constellation actually useful, as it makes room for 1 more detector stack. In total, this constellation is about a 24.6% damage increase from C5 or 31.7% increase from C0 for Eula. However, it's just a simple damage buff for only the main DPS, unlike Bennett, who can buff the entire team, or for Ruse on C6, who is now batterying, grouping, and acting as an amazing sub DPS with her burst. So while it is really good for buffing Eula, it doesn't do anything else. All around, his constellations are not very good. He offers minor boosts on everything, with his peaks being a decent energy reduction on his burst at C4, breaking an attack speed stack threshold for Eula at C5, and a great damage bonus at C6, with his burst constellations being pretty poor. Now onto artifact sets. Since he is a support, you're mostly looking towards support-focused artifact sets, where he has only one, that being the Noblesse set for the extra attack buffing. You can also run a 2-piece emblem and 2-piece tenacity set if you're really in dire need for stats. For his stat lineup, you're looking at HP on the flower, attack on the feather, HP% on the sands and goblet, and healing bonus on the circlet. If you're struggling with energy, an ER on the sands and HP% on the circlet is also a good choice. But if you can, you should be focusing on great energy recharge stats for her substats. At C0, Mika should focus on energy recharge for his substats up to 230% or 200% with Favonius Lance. He needs a good amount for his burst to be up constantly, but after that all you want is HP. At C4, you can instead go more for 165% energy recharge. There's also the option to go a Clam set, which is incredibly good for him to serve as a partial sub DPS option. While this might sound dumb at first, it's actually really strong due to the way the Clam set's damage is calculated, as it basically counts as a transformative reaction that deals physical damage. So with the only things that matter with its damage amount being his healing and physical resistance shred, the Clam set is going to allow Mika to nuke the enemies. In fact, it is on par with Noblesse for Mika at C3. So for the set, you're looking to go HP, attack, HP%, and healing bonus, and substats are the same as the other support set. However, you might want to go with a main DPS Mika since he mega buffs physical damage. While this isn't amazing, it actually kind of slaps at C6, especially with Rosaria, Yunjin, and Fischl. For this, the Pale Flame set is very strong for him, and he should be able to proc it in one elemental skill instance with his hold shot. If this cannot be utilized effectively, then 2-piece Pale Flame and 2-piece Bloodstained is his best. Otherwise, it's his second best. For the main stats and substats, it's the normal DPS stuff: HP Flower, attack feather, attack percent sands, physical damage goblet, and crit circlet. Substats are crit ratio for 1 to 2-ish. Just keep in mind that he is a cryo character, and with Rosaria, you're generally gaining about 30% extra crit rate, so you can focus more on crit damage. Just try to remember that your crit cap is going to be more around 70%. After that, you're looking at attack and then energy recharge. For his weapons, you have a few good supportive options. At C0, his best supportive weapon is the Favonius Lance because it's able to dramatically mitigate his energy issue. It also leads to his second highest damage output for his supportive build, just due to the minor amount of crit investment you want and due to the higher base attack. It also leads to the most healing of all weapons, due to the fact that you could stuff all the stats you need into HP% instead of energy recharge. Passive effect is also very easy to proc, due to the fact that he has access to cryo resonance and he has a 4-hit skill, allowing him access to easy crit fishing potential. Then there's Black Tassel, which offers a lot of HP%, perfect for healing Clam, but suffers in the energy department. There's also Prototype Star Glitter and Skyward Spine. Skyward offers the most damage, but suffers the most in the healing department, while Prototype just kind of suffers in general. However, these weapons change in viability with his C4, since you need less energy and can therefore build more into HP. In this situation, the Black Tassel takes the lead over Favonius in the healing department, giving you the option to go more for healing with Tassel or more battery potential with Favonius. If you want an easy way to plan out a route with him while using the same artifacts, then use Favonius on him before C4. Build around 200% energy recharge with the weapon included. Then, once at C4, simply swap Favonius with Black Tassel and you'll have the perfect amount of energy and HP percent for him both before and after C4. After the support build, there's the DPS build. Here, the best 3 options from worst to best are Staff of Scarlet Sands, Deathmatch, and the man, the myth, the legend, Staff of Oma. I mean, like, who else was it gonna be? You might notice that the damage numbers are high, and that's just because Mika's not a bad DPS, especially with GENSHIN. Here, his weapon order is pretty interesting. He mostly benefits from crit and attack since he has so much % damage bonus. So the weapon order here would be Staff of Oma, Deathmatch, Staff of Scarlet Sands, Primordial Jade Wing Spear, Crescent Pike, and then White Tassel. Now onto Mika's synergies, and who to pair him with. Mika is a specific physical damage buffing support, so obviously he should pair well with 3 physical DPS we have in the game, right? Well, no, not really. The issue is, as always, when compared to Bennett, as Bennett is just better with both Xinyan and Razor, even with Mika at C6. A lot of what Mika has to offer is behind his attack speed, which Razor almost caps out on his own, making it worse on him than other buffs by comparison, and which Xinyan doesn't utilize. Razor also has higher % damage bonuses in his kit, which benefit much more from Bennett's insane attack buff than Mika's % damage buff. Xinyan only gets the % damage bonus from Mika, but Bennett is able to mega buff Xinyan's pitiful attack stats, especially due to Pyro Resonance. The damage difference between Bennett and a C6 Mika for these two characters is 80,000 damage for Razor and double that for Xinyan. However, Mika is better than Bennett with Eula, but only Eula. The issue with him in a Eula team is when you have other sub-DPS characters like Rosaria, Fischl, and the Raiden Shogun, as they all benefit from Bennett but not Mika. The difference is not incredibly high, but there is a good reason to use Bennett over Mika in a Eula team, specifically due to the fact that Bennett can buff the entire team, which will lead to a higher DPS, even though it's only by a few thousand per rotation. Mika only surpasses Bennett's buffing potential for Eula at C6, which sucks. However, he is the next best alternative to Bennett in case you don't like or can't use Bennett, and he is better in the overworld because his buffing is elemental skill based. His best team is with Eula as the main DPS, with Rosaria, and then either Fischl or the Raiden Shogun for electro damage and battery potential. But that's not the final spot he's good in. He's also pretty powerful when you want to turn a character into a physical DPS. Mika, along with any combination of Rosaria, Fischl, GENSHIN, and Bennett himself, is actually very strong as they all support each other, and you can build all of them except GENSHIN as the main DPS, which will work decent well. Now onto the rating. In terms of ease of use, Mika is incredibly easy. All you need to do is use his hold skill on a target and then burst if you have it up. Normal, easy, and simple style of play like most other characters. So he's going to get a 4.5 out of 5 stars here. Next up is his utility. At C0, his utility is pretty strong, but it's only for the main DPS and physical DPS characters, and even then, it does not surpass Bennett's buffs in many scenarios. At C6, it is very good and surpasses Bennett's buffs while also pairing well with him, so I would give to him 3 stars before C6 and 4 stars after C6. For his damage, he basically has none unless you build specifically for it as a main DPS or with a clam set. So for support, going to have to give him a 0 out of 5 stars, but as a main DPS, well, it's actually really good, but only when paired with 3 other C6 4-star units. So I'll have to give him a 3 out of 5 as a damage dealer. Then there's his versatility, where he is just as niche, if not more so, than Kujo Sara, as he can only really work well with Eula. So I'm going to have to give him a 1 out of 5 here. In total, he's generally a pretty weak and niche character, as he is absurdly niche and only excels in that niche at C6, like so many other characters in this now flooded market of 4-star niche elemental supports. But even when compared to those elemental supports, he still appears to suffer. So I'm going to have to give him a simple 2 out of 5 stars. However, Mika has more issues pertaining particularly to Eula. Since Mika is only best used with Eula, he is specifically reliant on how good she is for his own viability, and Eula has a bunch of problems. Eula is notoriously pretty good on paper, but awful in practice because of how her kit works. Each attack, while her burst is active, makes her burst deal more damage. This means that instead of one basic attack leading to a pretty minor damage increase, like it would for most other characters, Eula suffers from the fact that each normal attack equates to about 6% more damage. While this isn't a lot when considering having to move between enemies and Abyss, since Eula does not have a capable grouper, Eula is going to have to lose out on some stacks, which would lead on average to about an 18% to 24% damage loss. That's on par to the damage difference between the first and second constellations on most 5-star characters. This is also the reason why she is seen seen specifically as a boss killer, as she can't lose stacks since bosses have an absurd amount of health. In group fights, there's actually a good reason to run Eula with a C6 Bennett, as he will nerf her normal attack damage output so she can reliably get more stacks for her burst to nuke. This is counter to what Mika provides at C6, as he will mega buff her physical damage, making it so she will annihilate enemies with her basic attacks before she can get stacks for her burst. This means that while on paper he increases her damage by an equal to drastically better amount than Bennett, the reality of the matter is that their damage buffing potential is going to be similar. In total, Mika will only ever be a side grade at least, or minor upgrade from Bennett at best. With that in mind, I'm going to have to update his score from a 2 out of 5 stars to a 1 out of 5 stars, making him one of the worst 4 stars we've seen in quite a while. If Mika instead provided more attack speed, crit rate buffing, and battery potential for increased consistency on Eula, instead of going for more damage buffing, Mika would be in a much better spot. Mika, in all, is a pretty weak character, as, like stated a numerous amount of times before, he's only good with Eula under certain circumstances. Otherwise, like the other elemental specific supports, he's practically useless as he is completely and utterly outclassed by the likes of Bennett. But that's his only major downside. If you don't have Bennett, you have Bennett C6, or you just don't like him, then Mika is a great and reliable support for all your physical DPS needs. But what do you guys think of Mika? Are you planning to pull for him? How do you plan to utilize him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But with that, I'm gonna get out of your hair. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye bye!